Most people and most business.
So, welcome guys, we are live now. We are live on YouTube now, and just a minute, let me just do the gallery view. Okay, so welcome everybody to another episode of Xtra Bytes. And today we have one wonderful photographer, and before I share his details, let me also share the panelists. Just a minute, let me, I think I will have to, there is some kind of echo coming, guys, so can you just check that you're on all muted? Okay, so we have Som Roy as a panelist, and Prakash Kumar Singh, he's from Dubai, and our Sandeep Mathur. And today's our guest is Andrea Celli. And if I have to talk about him, and I was going through his website, and I realized that he was born and brought up in one of the most beautiful places in terms of landscape photography on this planet Earth, which is Tuscany. And I'm really jealous, Andrea, because how come? How did you take birth in Tuscany and got raised there? It's a place where we actually always get the desire to go there. We aspire to be there. I've never been there, and I hate you for that. So. Anyway, jokes aside, they say that in India we have to travel to go to some nature, some beautiful nature. And I think in Tuscany, the nature will be knocking at your door every time. Come, knock, knock, come outside. The nature is waiting for you. And I think that's the major difference. And I was chatting with Andrea for just a few minutes before we started this chat. And I got to know something very interesting, that he actually started seriously in photography in 2014. So, and these 6 years have been phenomenal in terms of his journey as a landscape photographer. And I would have some interesting questions lined up for that. But while I was going through your website as well, I read something, and I want to quote that. And he says that my way of photographing nature, devoid of human presence, was slow and gradual passage that led me to live the photographic experience in perfect harmony with the environment that surrounds me, immersed with my feet in the water, in the snow, or inside a forest, are the moments in which I can truly connect with the world around me. And it is these moments that I try to convey my emotions in my shots, working them with techniques developed over years of study and learning in a process that is still evolving today, but always with respect and aesthetic research of a perfect union between art and nature. Andrea, my just first question is, have you ever thought of getting into writing as well? That was a wonderful written piece.
Oh, thank you. First of all, I would like to say thank you to everyone to invite me in this incredible web space in which I feel like so small among that great names you already interviewed. Well, part of my photography is connected and related to literature too, not only in terms of like philosophy part and something that you can to to try to put on your shots. And all the inspiration that I have coming from music, literature. So maybe one day I will try to write something about photography or about the feeling that I had. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea, for actually agreeing to be a part of this session. And it's really quite an honor. And we are trying to create something, and it's wonderful to have you as this a part of this project that we are doing. And so I will not talk much now. So my request is that please take us through your journey. When did you get your first camera? Why you still didn't get into landscape photography right from the word go, and what took you so long into getting into landscape photography, and your challenges, your inspirations, your aspirations, your balancing life, and finally your accolades. So if you can talk us through that entire journey, it will be phenomenal.
Well, I started to take some of my first landscape shots in 2014, trying to make something easily for me that was to go outside Tuscany. It was pretty easily for me, not only in terms of the geographic distance between the main places, but only because we have a lot of environment here in Tuscany that such like hills and countryside, of course, that are most famous maybe spots and places in Tuscany, but we are lucky to have mountains and seashores, like to trying kind of seascapes photography, and forest and streams as well. So with this kind of group of environmental, I've tried to put in the first steps in my journey in landscape photography, starting from Val d'Orcia. That is one of the most famous region, not only in Tuscany, but I think in Italy. After that, I tried to try something that I was watching in those years in the website, like 500 pixels or Flickr, and great website where you could learn so much from great authors. And I've tried to see that those techniques and try to make my own. In that moment, I was fascinated by that kind of American style, like Ryan Dyer, you already your guest, or even a shot of Enrico Fossati that you already interviewed, was so inspiring for me. But that was not so simple to translate in Tuscany landscape, because they are very kind of style that match very perfect with kind of wilderness, like mountains, bad weather, or something like that. Even in Tuscany, we don't have, especially in Val d'Orcia, we don't have that kind of mood. So I thought it was like forcing, taking their own vision and trying to translate in Tuscany shot. So I prefer to stay on like a fairy tales atmosphere, like a softly and very gentle light. And maybe at that time there was only one photographer that did it. It was Daniel Cordan. I don't know if you know him. And he went in Tuscany, I think in those years. And I remember that I completely were fascinated by this kind of dreamy landscape he could make. So I tried to put that kind of atmosphere in my first journey, my first works in Tuscany. And this is how it starts. And then after that, I was able to manage those kind of techniques that was kind of basilar, but for me was well enough. And after that, I made my travel in Iceland. That was in 2016. That travel completely changed me because I became 100% landscape photographer. And before that, I went on field to make landscape just for the 50% of my entirely works in photography. I remember that I started with making a kind of travel photography or something like that. I made a lot of beautiful travel in Morocco, in Thailand, and I remember that the main goal was to bringing back something, good photos from the holidays. And then after that, that's this kind of travel in Iceland completely changed me. And I was remember that I felt in love in landscape photography till 2016, and till from that year I tried to improve myself before improve my photography.
That's fantastic. That's
more or less this is it. And in last 2 years, I've tried to make something different, trying to drop this first technical and inspirational part of my first journey in landscape, and I'm trying something new, trying something else, more related to natural aspect of the landscape.
Okay, fantastic. We'll not really. We are already itching to see the images. So if you can take us through your maybe Tuscany, because we would like to see Tuscany from your eyes. We've seen from many travelers and other landscape photographers who travel to Tuscany to capture that.
Sure. So, can I share my screen?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So here they are. I selected just a few of them, but first of all, I would like to give to all the audience of from India or the other part of the world that are listening and watching this interview, this kind of feeling that you have when you are on the field in Tuscany. I don't know if some of you been there, but some for sure there been there. So I don't know if you can see the little man on the bottom of the frame, just to make you understand how is the environment. The classic.
Andrea, one second. Your image is in a grid mode.
Green mode.
Grid mode. We cannot see the image you are showing.
See the big image right now.
Okay. So sorry guys, I'm completely a newbie with this stuff. So you cannot see the image now?
No.
You can see the folder, Andrea. So you have to share the image. You have to share the image. Happens quite a lot.
Okay, I will try again now.
No, you have to share the screen with the image. Then it will come. Just minimize the folder.
Yeah, just go to screen share and then basically change it to the image.
Okay. Should I have tried to something else? I don't know, because I'm seeing the photos.
Or I don't know if you can probably expand that image.
Okay. Now? No?
No.
No.
I think stop the sharing and then start again.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Can you look at the image now?
Still the folder.
This is how to.
I don't know.
Can you change the grid mode to? I think you are opening in a different software or something.
You're on a Mac, right? So just
Yeah.
just hit spacebar. Just hit spacebar. So,
Spacebar, I can push the spacebar. Okay, now it works.
Yeah, now it is there.
Can you see there now?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for this.
No, it's okay. Does happen.
Okay. As I said, this is the image that I was told you, and this is just for before to see the other one, to allow to the people what kind of scale is Tuscany, you know. And this is a classic shot from Tuscany. I made it with a telelens to push forward all the layers of the plants. And I would like to show you, looking on the bottom of the image, the scale of the man before you see the entire image. So this is a classical light situation in Tuscany when there are kind of golden hour before, in the early morning, during the sunrise. And classical subject in Tuscany are villas, trees, and hills. And this kind of vision can be related to the painting world too. You could see them also in great artists of the past, like Leonardo da Vinci. Just behind the Gioconda, you can see this kind of environment. Okay. Okay. Now we have to change the image. Just tell me if it works. Can you see the other one?
Spacebar.
Spacebar. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is one of the most famous places in Tuscany. It's called Podere Belvedere. And I made this shot in winter time with it's a sunrise coming from the right part of the frame. And it's quite simple to make this kind of a shot in Tuscany because often you can find this kind of foggy morning and misty morning, especially when there are so many rain before you can go there, and it creates like this simple, dreamy atmosphere. And so I tried to move my first steps here because, as I said, it was kind of very simple and very easily to took one or more shots that they work pretty well. So the difficult level of this kind of landscape photography is quite low, you know. This is why I choose to begin from here. I remember that I went there for the first time in 2012. I went near Pienza. At that time, I didn't have a tripod, but I remember that I fell in love with this kind of countryside environment, and this kind of warm and gentle light always fascinated me. After that, I went back here in 2014 with my tripod and a few lenses. Maybe I had some filters at the time. So I started trying to put the first steps in kind of landscape photography using, mind and techniques, and not only for taking memories. At that time, these places were not so overcrowded, you could stay there between maybe 2 or 3 persons around you. I don't know if you know, but in the last 4 years, 3 years, it's quite difficult to find a place to shot and to put your tripod there, because as you know, social media, Instagram,
Made it really
creating a kind of big groups from all of the part of the world. Coming in Tuscany, it's quite simple because this place it's all near the car parking, so it's pretty easily to take a shot, a good shot, and you don't have to walk a lot. So this is why Tuscany became one of the most popular landscape travel. And of course, you can enjoy Italian kitchen, Italian style, Italian life. I think it's quite a good experience from someone who came maybe from the big cities, because you can find a very gentle and peaceful places. So what I try to do in my photos, I always try to do, it's creating kind of balancing between subjects, and not only, but we're using the property, the proper lights and colors. These three elements are always my key, to trying to guide the viewer inside the frame. So in this case, I create as you can see, there are the villa inside one of the key point of the frame. The other key point is this group of trees, and everything is balanced by this warming tone coming from the right side of the frame and becoming cold ones. And this is creating this kind of tonal contrast and this kind of depth of field that you can see on the image. If you have any question, or can I move forward?
So
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
This is a single shot, or you bracketed? How is this?
No, this is a single shot.
Okay.
I use bracketing only when I shot the sun stars.
Okay.
I don't really like to merge so many, raw files. Sometimes I did, but I prefer to make a single shot, especially because we have great sensor, and dynamic range is so large that I think that it's a wasting of time trying to. Sorry.
No,
Sorry, I don't know.
I was telling Prakash, we all use the same brand, you, me, and Prakash. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a Sony. In this this age, I had the first Alpha 7 Mark 1, Alpha 7 R Mark 1. Was a kind of, simple gear for me, but as a landscape, I didn't need so many features like focus, a very speedy focus or something like that. So I remember that I used to set my Sony camera with the Canon lens. And then after the year after that, now we have, any choice that you want, speaking about lens in Sony. So, so to answer your question, yes, it's one shot, and everything was readable. And I always check on my viewfinder if I can read every part of the image. If I not, I took another shot, but it's not. I'm not the kind of landscape photographer who like to, put all this kind of raw together and blend it so much.
Perfect.
Okay, I would like to show you another shot just from the same place. Can you see that? Can you see it?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Just to make you to try to give you the atmosphere few minutes before the other one. This same morning, same spot, and I've tried to create this kind of digression of blue tones until the red sky was very, very punchy, and trying to, as I told you before, to creating attention on the viewer. I set the lamppost, on the villas, and I work on that tiny light in post-processing, making it much lighter and much bigger because it was really so small. And I think that this particular details of the image balancing everything in this kind of shot. Because without it, you starting go around from here to there, and this is good. But I would like to set like a key point, on the villas. This kind of atmosphere is quite simple to find in Tuscany, with blue hours and foggy, very near the land and the terrain. And then if you find this kind of burnished sky, you can create this kind of tonal contrast in the image. Okay.
That was
Last
also
one.
the one that you showed, that's also a single exposure, right?
Yeah. Single exposure. Yeah. No, sorry. For that, I used another shot from the sky, for the sky.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It passed a few years from now. Okay. I don't know if can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. I'm showing you something from the same place because it's kind of a way for me to give you how I changed the key to how I interpreted this main shot. And this is the last shot that I've done here, because I never been there for maybe 2 years because I was pretty tired to shot every time in Tuscany. But this kind of creating a relationship between a foreground, a strong foreground, and the main subject. And this is what in this moment I was approaching another style of photography and looking at those names I already told you, coming from US, especially from US. They I saw on 500 pixel and on the website like that. They are working more in a vertical landscape. They always try to put something on the foreground, trying to guide the viewer in the depth of the frame. But as I told you, I can't shoot mountains, so the dramatical aspect of those kind of language completely disappeared. And I tried to make this kind of dreamy landscape. Since at the beginning, I tried to relate the subject between, as I told you, nature and villas. This is my first try to make a kind of focus stacking shot. And I remember that in that moment I was learning a lot of stuff from great authors, and there are so many things to do on the field, like focus stacking, focal blending, trying different exposition and trying to merge them on post-processing, dodging and burning, ortho effect, all this packaging you can take and try to put on your image. So it was the first try that I've done, and I remember I was pretty happy to this kind of results.
Great.
Okay, so I will show you something classical from Tuscany, something that I used to shot a few years ago and at the beginning of my journey. This is another iconical places in Tuscany. If you Google Tuscany, you can find the Podere Belvedere at the first place and Cypress Hills at the second place, maybe. And I remember I went there waiting for the blooming, this kind of flowering you can find on the hills in Tuscany. This yellow flowering are very common in Tuscany, but find them on just near the cypress was pretty rare, and I didn't saw many images like this. I remember that I went there starting from Florence in a day of springtime. I have not the idea to take this shot, but when I go on the road near the cypress, I remember that I saw all this yellow sea, under the main road. So I was with one of my best friends, so we decided to stop the car and trying to make this photo. And we were pretty lucky because the sun was very interesting during the sunset. This is a sunset shot. There are some difference before speaking about the other shots, because in this kind of image there are not so intense light, like a strong light. But I tried to work with colors, and it was one of the first tentative for me, and tried for me to working with colors instead of light. I don't know if I'm clear, but the three things important for me in photography, of course, the light is in the first place, colors and shapes. Maybe because for my work I used to do it in my main job, but colors are for me as much important as the lights, and creating something interesting with the shapes as well. So I'm not a huge fan of squared cutting photo like in Instagram ones. I prefer classical cutting from coming from the camera, but in this case there were so many distraction things, and I decided to cut off and creating this square shot, guiding with this oblique line or diagonal line, and putting the subject in the middle is not one of my main goals in photography, but I thought that it can work in this case.
I think it is working here beautifully, because you have one beautiful foreground which is yellow, and that density of those flowers are leading your eyes to that center position trees, and then you have another beautiful sky here. So I think it is working perfectly fine, and you breaking the rules and everything is really going well here.
Yeah, I'm not a kind of forced landscape photographer on the thirds. Sometimes I use the rules of thirds, of course, sometimes not. Try to be much more free as I could.
Yeah.
Okay, going forward to this journey in landscape, I have to tell you, I have to be honest. Looking at these photos for me is quite, like to go back in my in my journey. I consider them a group of beautiful postcards, you know. But the meaning of these shots are, you know, quite a low level for me, for what I'm doing right now, you know. But I'm happy to share it with you, because it can allow me to give you the my travel and my journey since the beginning till right now. So
Yes, yes.
sorry if I know it maybe it's quite boring stuff. I know.
No, this is
No,
not.
no, love these images. I am feeling now traveling there. Seriously, I have never been to the
Okay.
Tuscany.
This is important for me, if I can bring you all together in this kind of atmosphere, I'm really happy. But
You did 100%.
okay. Well, I took this shot in winter sunrise. This is one of the another most iconic place in Tuscany. This church chapel, Vitaleta Chapel, and it's a lonely church on the hill. You can shot very easily from the road using the telelens. What I've tried to do here is, like before, I will try to creating this transition between warming tones and cold ones. And I'm a big fan of kind of landscape created by layers, horizontal layers. This is one of the things that I already use, you know. I don't like too much to push on wide angles. I have that moment, but I dropped it a few years ago, and I prefer to stay on these horizontal lines and creating the shapes, as I told you before, using colors and lights. This can allow me to create this kind of balancing in the image. I wait there for the perfect light condition for me. That was the sunrise coming just from the lowest part of the horizon, because a few minutes later, the atmosphere completely changed. The light were so strong. So I prefer to shot at the right moment when sun rised. And it allowed me to, you know, giving this guiding line very low on the land of the terrain, that hitting the very first part of the landscape. This created for me kind of time suspension, you know, like the clock was stopped, and I would like people stay there for a while and looking at the subject and colors, and of course the lights. Speaking about this place, I will show you another condition that I found another time that completely changed the rules. This kind of monochromatic shots, as I told you before, you can often find a misty and foggy morning in Tuscany. It's one of the elements in which you have to be prepared of, you know. And sometimes these fog are too strong that you can even see in the subjects, but sometimes create this kind of dramatic scenario. And I remember I was waiting for you know, the trees coming from the below of the image. And as I told you before, I worked here with horizontal lines created by the whitest part of the fog and the bluish tones in the shadows. So it's kind of three elements here. We can see the part in the shadows, like trees and the chapels, part in the kind of light that was very kind of unique light because the sun was covered. So the brightest part of the image is the fog and the shadow behind the fog. So I think that it worked pretty well in this case.
Yeah, Andrea, there's one question in the YouTube from Sanak. He's wanting to ask that which time of the year did you capture this?
Oh, I captured it in winter time, just before the springtime in February.
Yeah, great. And for me, I think there is one observation here which I think that I can share with you is what the way I feel. Now this is one classical image where you can share that the fog really helps you create these layers and helps you create the depth in the image. Where usually fog is taken as something which is taking it away from an image in terms of details, in terms of that punch that an image has. But here it is helping you create that depth in the image. And it's such a beautiful classical example of that.
Yeah, it's correct. Because this kind of transition created by the fog can give you the depth of the field.
Yeah.
So would you say, Andrea, that the winter time is the best time to travel to Tuscany?
No, it's not the best moment. For me, it's the best moment is in during the fall, autumn. But
during the fall,
it depends.
We cannot see the green meadows. There'll be
Sorry, guys.
During the fall, there'll be no green meadows. I think for the meadows, it must be summer. But for the fog, it has to be the winters.
Yeah, Val d'Orcia is one of the kind of place where you can go there in 4 or 5 times during the years, and you can find 5 different conditions. Because we have the green grass field, the
meadows.
Yeah, the meadows, and then after that, in this moment, you can find also some flowerings, the yellowish or the poppies. And after that, you can shot during the summertime. You will find every field. They are cut, because they cut the grass.
Yeah.
So I will show you something, because I don't remember very well the name of this stuff. Okay, this is summer, where they cut the tree, the hills.
And then you have the rolls. You have
the rolls.
Grass.
Yeah,
exactly.
The rolls.
Okay.
Near the summer, yeah. And this is between springtime and summer, because as you can see, there's still a lot of green, but becoming more yellowish.
Sandeep, can I give you advice?
Sorry?
Sandeep?
Yeah?
I think best advice is that how about spending 6 or 7 months there?
Difficult question.
I would love it.
I think you should come twice in 1 year.
Yeah.
One during the autumn and one during the springtime. And I saw, as I told you before, Daniel Cordan he used to come in Tuscany 2 times 8 years, in 1 year, to make workshops. Yeah. So if I had to advise some special moment, you can choose from autumn or springtime.
I think the poppy blooms as well, right, Andrea? That's during spring.
Spring, right now, in this moment.
Yes.
Going forward in this kind of postcards collection of Tuscany, and this is another shot everyone say that this is in Val d'Orcia, but they make a mistakes because this is another region. It's near Siena, and it calls Crete Senesi. This is one of the most iconic places because, as you can see, this road creates a kind of balancing of the image. And I went there for the flowerings as well. And I remember that I found this very dreamy and softly sunset that can allow me to make this shot. I have to tell you that I went there 5 times in maybe 3 years to make this shot because I was very unlucky with this place. Every time I went there, I always found cloudy sky or not good conditions, or maybe I didn't find the foreground like this. So that time it was pretty a luck to me to capture this kind of images. And technically, this is a series of 3 shots. As I told you before, when I shot in front of the sun, I used to take more than 1 shot. This because I love to blend the image together without using the filters. But in this case, you could use maybe a graduated one, and maybe you can preserve post-processing time. After that, I worked in this image with classical dodge and burning things and autumn effects, stuff like this. And now it's quite simple to use, but at that time, I remember that those techniques were quite difficult to learn. And I remember that I purchased my first video of coming from TK Panel and Shock Best Show. Then I bought even the Ryan Dyers ones and Enrico Fossati. That completely opened my mind in terms of techniques. I don't know if you have any question about it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, this is what, summer, winter?
No, it's springtime.
Springtime.
Mm-hmm.
So actually there is one question in YouTube from Nakul. He is asking that, is it April, May, that is the best time to go there?
I think that is, yeah.
For me, it's the best time. This is the question.
Yes.
Yeah. If you are one of those kind of photographers that want to put something on your foreground, yeah, definitely. You have to go in springtime. If you have something like a dreamy, foggy atmosphere, like dark atmosphere, or creating something in details, because the fog can allow you to create something different, you know. You should try autumn, and you will lose your foreground, you know, because without flowering in Val d'Orcia or in Tuscany, there are not such important things to put on your foreground.
Nice.
I don't know if I answered well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think looking at this image and what you said while describing this image, there's a huge learning for everybody who's watching this video to take back home, is that just because you live in a certain place and you own a certain brand of camera does not make you a photographer and does not even ensure that you will click good images. You still will have to seek inspiration. You will still have to work hard. You will still have to take your thoughts away from those cliched images. You will still have to go back again and again, trying in search of a good weather, and still be lucky. And then probably you will try and reach a place in your life where people can start calling you a photographer. I think that is a huge learning for all of us.
I'm totally agree with you, and I can say that I have this beautiful memories of that moment when I started to think about landscape photography as something not so easy to do, because there was a time that I thought landscape was kind of a B-side of photography, you know, something for beginners. Then when I started to move the first steps in landscape photography, I remember that I thought, fuck, it's not so simple at all. Because I was watching the 500 pixel big names, and they were so inspiring for me. And I remember that in that moment, the passion for landscape were at the highest level for me. And I remember that I come back from work Friday night, and I take a quick dinner, and then make like 4 or 5 years sleeping in the evening, and then in the middle of the night I took my car and I slept in my car so many times to be on the field as much as soon as possible, you know. I don't know if I have the energy to do it right now, but I remember that was a very very happy moment for me. And this is why, maybe because I always share this moment with one of my best friends and a couple of very few people. Sharing together this moment is one of my, it's an important thing for me.
Can we see something different, Andrea,
Sure.
like your mountains and your...
Sure. Can I show you just something from
yes.
the latest shot from Tuscany, just because I want to give you the idea how I evolved my photography in this kind of landscape.
Okay.
Okay, just to make a quick jump ahead. This is always Tuscany, of course, but this is the first try when I try to drop the iconic place like villas, and trying to work with shapes and colors, and creating this kind of balancing in the image without shooting a place very known, very famous. And I think it's kind of in the beginning was kind of difficult because you don't have your classical subject in front of you, so you have to learn to see, what is really important in the frame. As I told you before, I love to play with shapes and colors. As you can see here, green from brown to blue, creating this kind of a mix that I think that's quite beautiful. And I will show you the last photo that I've done in Tuscany. It's completely something different, going inside a kind of abstraction, or kind of some people call that intimates, or some people innerscape, but this kind of image, it's kind of for me to express myself better than shooting that Potere Belvedere, for example, because under this shot there are so many thoughts for me. I remember that I waiting for the right moment to do it. I did it in winter time when there are no grass on the fields, because I would like to represent a kind of the desert in Tuscany. And we are lucky to have these natural shapes. And I remember that I wait for the right moment with this kind of gentle light that eaten the lines of the shape, separating each other. And this kind of digression of landscape, this kind of abstraction is what I prefer right now. And maybe this kind of image, if I put on Instagram a classical villas shot, I can reach 1,000 likes maybe. If I put this, maybe 100 if I'm lucky. But this is not my main goal,
Brilliant.
I'm not so comfortable staying, kind of how many followers. I don't think it's the main goal for a landscape photographer.
This image is image is actually, I think, a classic example again how a photographer should see beyond those vastness of those fields and all. I think this is amazing. Just one question cropping in my mind, Andrea, that what is your best choice of lens for Tuscany? That will give us fair idea as to what kind of, especially people like us who have never been there, what kind of landscapes are there. So is it wide angle is your preferred, or is it?
Well, as I told you before, maybe 60% of my Tuscany shot were I made them using telelens 17-200.
Okay.
But if I have advice, I'll give you an advice. You should bring with you a medium and maybe a large zoom telelens, like from 24 to 400. It's perfect. And I have only 3 lenses in my backpack. I have 12, 24, 105, and 100, 400.
Okay.
Because I would like to have all the range between with me,
So Andrea, just a small question.
Yeah.
On the last picture, these highlights on these dunes.
Yeah.
This is because of the moisture coming out of the ground, or you've created this?
No. There was naturally like a tiny foggy and mist coming from just the highest part of the dunes.
Okay.
But I use a luminosity mask here to dodging more these lines.
Okay.
Because it were not so strong.
Okay.
Andrea, this was one of my favorite.
This was indeed very good. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Very well made. Excellent.
So, do you have any pictures from the Tyrrhenian coast or the Apennine forests?
Oh, yeah. So Tuscany, I have this one that you already seen.
Wow.
As I told you, thank you. Well, this is my last sunset that I've done, maybe 1 year ago, and I consider it like my old stuff. But when I went there, I saw this kind of crazy situation, crazy atmosphere, and the light was so perfect, and the sun were coming from the little tiny window on the horizon, that I went there and I said to me, I have to take this shot, even if maybe it doesn't represent me so much in this moment. But as I told you before, Tuscany is maybe one of the best regions in Italy because we have a lot of environmentals in the region, and one of most important is the wild coast on the coast of the Tirreno Sea. Kind of coast is quite different if you move to the north or on the south of the Tuscany, because changing very quickly, becoming from a rock part, like this kind of rocks. Then we have seashore, you know, like the beaches. And then we have another part of Tuscany that is quite beautiful, pretty beautiful. It called Maremma. Even there are so many places to shot in the seascape. So a few words about this shot. What I've tried to do here is creating a balancing between main subject of the in the scene. I don't like right now to shot in front of the sun, because I think that the sun star is something that it in the frame too much. It attract all the attention for me inside the frame. So if you have not something to put on the opposite part of the sun very strong, you can't have a balancing image, you know. I don't know if you can understand me, guys, because my English is pretty basic.
No, you're perfect.
Okay. Another thing that I would like to make in these photos was to split in two tones, the warming part and the coldest one. So if you can see in this image, I use only two colors, and the shades of these main colors. I mean, the sun and the rocks are warm and are on the range of the orange and brown colors. The other part, the sea and the sky, are the opposite one. And I use a kind of warm blue near to the violet to match better this kind of two tones. About this shot, I would like to show you something to, I don't know if you can see, can you see my screen on Photoshop?
No.
No?
So you have
Okay.
to stop sharing and then reshare once Photoshop is up. That's what you have to do.
Stop sharing and resharing.
Yes.
Okay.
Try sharing now and you will have the option to share Photoshop.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, now
It
visible.
works? Okay. Okay, a few things about how I read this image when I was on the field. I think that it can be a precious thing for all the people are looking this interview. I saw post-processing and I saw other things that are very important, but I would like to share you something about the composition. First of all, I would like to give you the idea of the rule of third in this image. As you can see, nothing it's so far from the key points, you know, but they are not perfectly matched on the third. So, but for me, this composition works pretty well, even if I were not on the rule of thirds. This is why, in this case, I try to force the composition in the golden section. You know, I don't know if you know it.
Yes.
Okay.
This is
this kind of composition is pretty rare to achieve, you know. And to do it, I warp a lot this curve on the foreground that was not so gentle, was not so, you know, curved. And I use the warp tool to help me to reach this kind of composition. What I have done here is creating a diagonal with the rocks. And the other line, very strong, it's the horizon. So I think that these two things inside the image perfectly match together. And the other diagonal, it's created by the sun and the void here in the first third. That this kind of dialogue, it's like, you know, in yin and yang things, you know, the positive and negative. Positive you can see in the sun, the negative it's, you can watch on this kind of void. And to do it, I would like to show you something to maybe interesting that this is the main subject for me in the scene. Sun, the waves coming in the part of the shadows, and the other part are the illuminated rocks. And to do it, I dodging quite hard here because there weren't these lights here, and I tried to pump up, trying to make this kind of rocks going out to create something in which people can stay for a while, you know. And if you see this image, if you watch this image, you can understand that everything is right there. The other part of the border are not so interesting. So I force people to stay here, and people maybe start from the sun, taking their view on the bottom of the image here where there is this void, go up, looking at this illuminated rock, going back, find something to take a little breath, you know, like these waves, and then go back to the sun. This is how I understand these images. And here in magenta, I will show you something in a secondary subject, you know. There are the waves, is another part of the rocks, and the other part of the rocks. But the main subject are the yellowish. After that, I would like to show you when I was talking about the warm tone and cold ones. Here's a mask created for the warm tones. Here's just the opposite for the cold ones.
Cold tones.
Yeah, cold tones. So you can see they are opposite and creating the balancing of the image. I don't know if you have any question, guys, about this quick lesson about composition and how to read my image.
This is a
or
huge,
if you have another question about techniques.
this is a huge learning for all of us here, because we get to see, and most of the people when we talk about landscape photography is only talk about very lamely about the presence of foreground and midground and background, very lamely, without even understanding that what is the best way to really include a foreground and try create a connection between a foreground and midground and background. And here you've really shown it, deconstructing the image piece by piece and showing it to us. Thank you, Andrea. That's what I can say. It's an amazing learning.
You're welcome.
Andrea, my question is the mask that you showed us, the warm mask and the cold mask.
Yeah.
Those masks were made by hand or by luminosity?
No, I created it with a tool that I used from many years that we called Tonality mask from an Italian guy who created this. It's an incredible tool for a landscape photographer, because you can create a mask with using tonality, not only for luminosity.
Okay.
But not only, you can use creating a mask using this kind of selection tool that can allow you to create a mask for every kind of tones, you know.
Wow.
And this is incredible. And if you want to know more about this beautiful plugin, you can go on tonalitymask.com.
Okay. Okay,
if you want to have, maybe I can give you something, you know, like discount.
Oh,
I have talked with this guy before, but I'm sure he will be very, very happy to do it. And I have to talk him.
Perfect.
Before.
Perfect.
But I don't know how to give the. I don't know if you can see my website.
No, we can see your Photoshop.
Go to the sharing option. Go to the sharing option, and then
Stop sharing. Okay, sharing back again, maybe.
yes.
Okay, let me close Photoshop first. I will show you these things because I want to make this, give you this advice. Okay, on my website, I don't know if you can see.
No, back to the
No.
folder.
You can see. You cannot see my website.
No.
Okay. By the way, the website is tonalitymasks.com.
Okay.
Let me know if you want something more about it. Okay. Now, how can I go back to my presentation? Sorry, guys, but I'm dumb of this kind of things. Can you see the folders right now?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember if it's someone of you want to see mountainscape or Iceland, I don't know.
Yes, that's right.
Mountains, okay. Okay. Can you see the pictures?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, after my travel in Iceland, I went back in Italy, and I'm starting to try to do something different than Tuscany. And so this is why I choose to go in Dolomites. It's quite simple to reach from Florence because it's not so far, like 4 hours by car. And so I try to make, a lot of tries to make beautiful shots there. And I remember that in that moment, I was completely astonishing by Ted Gore shots. I know that you already know that guy. It's, like, it was like a genius for me. And I think that no one represents Dolomites better than him, even now.
Yes.
And it was very inspiring. And I saw one of his shot that he made in maybe 2015, maybe 2016, here in Cinque Torri. This is one of the most popular shots in Dolomites. And I remember that I went there to creating something like his photos. It was so inspiring for me. But I remember that he did this photo during the springtime, during the wild flowerings. So I went there between springtime and winter. And I was, pretty lucky to find this kind of condition because it allowed me to give the message that create this kind of splitting line, like these vertical lines created by the winter, and the snow that represent the wind. And the other part that represent for me the springtime. And it was a perfect moment because I remember that I was there with a group of friends, and we were trying to make this kind of shot for 2 days. And the day before, we found a foggy morning that we can barely look at the mountains. And the day after, we found finally an open sky, and this is creating this kind of beautiful scenario. And speaking about the shot, this one of my first shot with a super wide angle. I use a 10 millimeters here. It was a Voigtlander. I love that kind of lens because it created this kind of super sharp sunstar. But it was very difficult to manage because 10 millimeters in a full frame camera, it's quite difficult to manage, you know. Of course, because if you shot mountains, they became very, very tiny, very, very small. So you have to try to warp and to give him back the position of the image. This is a series of 5 or 4 shots, taking all the dynamic range because the sun was very, very strong. You know, when you are in mountains, sun coming very late on the horizon. So they are completely different managing of the light. I remember that in that moment I was fascinated by US landscape photographers like Ted Gore, one of them, Ryan Dyer, Mark Adams, and the greatest, you know, authors of that time. They are still the greatest one for me. I don't know if you have any question about it.
So you said Ted Gore's image was the inspiration, right, Andrea?
Yeah.
So I think he shot that in spring, right, Ted? And you went there in the winters. So what exactly was the inspiration? I think Prakash also wanted to know.
Well, my inspiration in Ted Gore at that moment was the managing of lighting. And because I truly love how it can, you know, using the line. And I think it was one of the most very talented photographer at that time, because I don't know why he stopped to make photos right now. But I think it was the perfect landscape photography for me in terms of subjects, colors, and managing of the lights. I think that it was one of the best. Of course, there are so many. But to answer to your question, I saw that image with the sun coming from the Cinque Torri, and I have to be honest, I went there to try to do something like that. That's it.
This is great. This is great. I love it.
Okay, I will show you something always from Dolomites. This is one of the last photo, maybe the last one I took in Dolomites, even if I went there 3 months ago before the pandemia. But I only took a few walks in the woods without shooting. You know, there were not the conditions to make a good photo, so I prefer to walk. But this one I made in maybe 2 years ago during the summertime. In this case, I met Federico Antonello. He's one of your next guests. We went together in this place. We hiked pretty late near the sunset. So I remember that was in late to put my tripod, and this is something that I hate. You know, I used to go maybe 1 or 2 hours before, because I would like to try different perspective and different angles. At that moment, I remember that we were in late, so I grabbed my tripod and I put using my instinct, you know. But this is one of my favorite images, because I think all the subject, as I told you before, with the seascapes, are in the middle of the frame, and there's only one void just near the lake that I I filled using the reflection of the peak. So I created this kind of square right here. And I remember in this case that I worked so much in color grading because the sun was not like that. It was completely cyanic, you know, like greenish. And I remember that I forced it to become like more warm. And so I worked on every single tones of the image, creating this kind of triology, you know, the blue tones and the orange and the green.
Andrea, just a question, not specifically for this image, but all your compositions, they seem so well thought out when I see them, right? And I remember from my time in Tuscany as well, you actually helped me find composition. Is this something that how do you build these compositions? Do you see the scene, or do you see through the viewfinder and then figure out the composition? What's your approach?
Well, if I go in some place that I never been there, I need my time, you know, my time to stay there for a while and trying different kind of composition, and I try different type of lens. I'm not all. There are many times that I go there. I've been there and I put a tripod. Because I don't want to do that. To be involved in the environment. I would like to stay for a while on the landscape. By the way, I think that maybe my main job helped me in this. Creating the balancing. It's one of my tasks in making my job. You know, and trying to match colors too and shapes too. So maybe I'm lucky to have this kind of a background coming from my main job.
Yes.
I don't know how to explain it. I think that for me it's quite natural. I never felt like forced to construction of the image, in the construction of the image. I always try to make what I like most, you know, and sometimes it works, sometimes not.
I was quite interested in one image, Andrea. I don't know if you have it today to show us. Do you remember one of the Italian coasts where you had a single rock with a small tree on top, which reminded you of Oregon?
Okay. Yeah, I should have it. I was there with one of my friend that knew that place that is not so easy to reach because it's in a private property. Oh, I don't remember where.
I can
just wait a second. Okay.
Yes.
That one.
Yes.
Okay. This it's an incredible place here in Liguria, just in the northern part of the Italy, where there are. It's a beautiful region where there are Cinque Terre, five lands. I don't know if you know the village on the coast.
Yes.
Okay. So I remember this. My friend called me and why don't you come to make me a visit? We can have lunch together and trying to something together on the field. And he showed me this place. I was completely astonishing because I saw many times Oregon coast, so many times this kind of vertical rocks with the trees above them. And so I remember it was so beautiful. I didn't find a great, dynamic on the waves, a great dynamic on the sea that maybe could be much better than this. And I remember that the sunset don't show so much, so it's kind of missed shot. I don't know how to explain this, but he had this subject with a crazy situation, with a great lighting and foreground with the big waves. He made incredible work. So I didn't remember this shot. I had to tell you, but it happened 3 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I shot with the 10 millimeters using in a full frame camera. So the subject, it was really close to me, but using this lens, I put it inside of the middle of the frame.
So for your Sunstar, which lens have you been using? The one in Cinque Terre? Sorry.
Cinque Torri, Voigtlander, 10 millimeters Aliar.
Okay, yeah.
Kind of crazy lens.
Yes.
But I sold it. It was too much for me. Okay. Guys, just tell me how much time do we have in order to have an idea to how many shots can I show you?
You can right now. You can go to maybe Lofoten and maybe Iceland as well. You can just see.
Okay. Before going Lofoten, I will show you something from Iceland.
Okay.
This is, the very first try for me to make a landscape journey.
This is amazing. This is so powerful.
Yeah, and I remember in this moment that it was like a stormy morning. The idea was another one to make these basaltic rocks using a wide angle from the other part of the village of Vik. Then the weather was terrible, and in this black beach near Vik in Iceland, it's pretty dangerous to use wide angles near the waves. So I remember that I dropped off the tripod and I used my telelens with free hand, trying to freezing the moment of the crashing waves on the basaltic rocks. Everything else, like lighting, managing of the light, it created in post-processing. It was kind of a flat image. At that time, we are speaking about 2016. 4 years ago, I made this shot. At that time, I didn't remember this subject, but I was in front of it. And so I tried to, creating something strong. And at that time, I always try to create imaging, my image, trying to get to represent the power of nature, and this is kind of dramatic aspect of the nature that I would like most at the time. And speaking about technique in post-processing, I creating this kind of glow, like this light coming from the right part of the image. And then I work in every single waves, trying to dodging the part of the top of the waves and burning the lowest part. This is created like a three-dimensional image, and I prefer to stay in only one color to create a monochromatic shot. I don't know if you have any question, or can I move forward?
Do you have raw of this? Is it possible?
I have the raw file, but I don't have here because I have in the old hard disk, And
We
I
can.
don't have here. I have only the JPEG, sorry.
Andrea, obviously, I think a lot of us in the sessions are interested because this is, you from the last 2 years back, a lot has changed. Andrea Celli has changed now in terms of your
Yeah.
view and composition.
Yeah.
So, do you want to show the recent, maybe from Lofoten or from
Yeah.
the forest scenes, and why did you change? What happened?
Well, why did I change? Good question. Well, honestly, it was pretty hard for me make this kind of changing because I don't know how to explain. It's something that you have to feel inside of you, and maybe because I'm kind of I live always with doubt inside me, and this kind of doubt creates me to every time to see at the past, see what I've done, see what I'm doing right now, where I would like to go. And looking at my past works, I always thought that was pretty good photos, but there are thousands of them. I don't know how to explain this, but they didn't speak no more for me. I was changed, and that works they didn't represent me. So I remember maybe 2 years ago, I choose the decision to forget what I've done, starting back from a white paper, like a new chapter of the book. And it was very, at the beginning, it was very, I was, didn't feel like, I don't know if I'm doing right, but I have to try. I have to try because the other option was to solve everything. Because I live every day with creativity, and finally, when you find yourself without creativity, it's difficult to have the passion to move forward, to wake up in the late night. If you have not so many passion, you cannot create something special, So I decided to change my view in landscape photography, and of course I took everything I'd learned. I didn't trash anything. I took everything I learned, and something of those techniques I still use right now. Something of that I drop off, but the main changing it was trying to make different photos from different type of light. As you can see in the latest works, I never try to shot to the sun.
Yes.
Because for me, it's represents something connecting to the past for me. And now I'm trying to use another kind of light, more, not more so intense, It's something like the light in my shots are in the second line right now. I don't know if you can understand me, guys, because.
So this relates to what Guy Tal, you follow Guy Tal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, somebody asked him, given that you have a representational style of photography, just connecting very intimate scenes with.
Last 2 years I saw, as before, I tried to learn from great authors,
right.
But I've changed the language of landscape photography. I'm trying to go more deeper, and I saw Gate all works, Adam Gibbs For example, Theo Bosbom, I don't know if you know him. All these editors, for me, they have something to tell us. When you see their works, they have something special, like a big project related together. And I was, always be focused on one shot. Went in Dolomite to do one shot. It's a wasting of time for me. I prefer right now to work in a bigger scale, bigger projects, and I know that I need so many years to close one project. But this allow me to get patience again. Something that you cannot easily achieve.
So do you relate to what Alex Noriega went through and even TJ Thorne went through?
Yeah.
You relate to that?
Yeah, they are great masters for me. Alex Noriega is one of the best photographers in landscape, talking about landscape, because he can switch from landscape, open landscape, to the details. TJ Thorne is another one, and I really love his job. His works are incredible, and they have that kind of sensibility.
Yes.
Sensitive. That is very rare to find in landscape photography. And they can switch from a bigger subject or something that you have just near your feet. They are awesome. Well, speaking about this shot, I've tried to. This is my last trip, my last journey, and after that, I made this in 2019. After that, I always been around here in Italy and Tuscany. I remember that it was not that kind of journey. You went back very happy because I was there with a group of friends and we didn't find a good condition for landscape photography. But we have tried to come back with something unique. And in this case, we took an apartment just in front of Auckland Beach. This is the Auckland Beach. And I remember during the night, there was a beautiful snowy night that covered all the beach. And for me, coming from a place like Tuscany, seeing this kind of landscape where the sand and the snow melt each other was incredible. I've tried to create this kind of dialogue between the ocean and the mountains. As the seascape before, I've tried to creating this kind of curve.
Yes, beautiful.
That is created by this foreground with this texture and water, and it ends with the snow. And this kind of degradation of subject related to colors allowed me to create, for me, a good balancing of the image. And the storm on the right side, balancing the part of the shadows instead of the part of the light coming from the
This is
left.
a golden spiral composition. I mean, if you put it on top, it would fit perfectly, the golden spiral.
Yeah, I've tried to do the same. Yeah. Another shot that I've done in Lofoten, as you can see here, just right before, there's a spiral here, in this very first foreground, and then creating horizontal layers. I put the mountains on the top. And I remember this shot because we were going back to the airport, and after 4 or 5 days, very bad condition for landscape photography. I mean, clear sky, no snowy or storm. 5 days of clear sky without any clouds. So we were very, very disappointed. We were going back to the airport, and one of my friends saw this beautiful lagoon, you know, like a lake and mountains. I remember that he first seen this kind of composition. So I asked him, can I take these pictures? Because I think that he found the key to represent this landscape using this kind of composition. And the reflection can create the feeling of this void in the part of the just below the mountains. Speaking about the light here, I took the shot just after the sunset, in which, as you know, I don't know if you guys go on the north, but after the sunset, the light continue to insist. You know, there's a very long blue hour. If you take a long exposure, you can took very large scales and shades of colors. You know, in our latitude, blue hours last very few minutes, and there are no so many shades of blue. This is why I try to capture this image.
So I think there's a question from YouTube for you from Sarita. She's asking, do you look for complementing shapes in nature, and why use subtle light to define your pics?
Why I use it? Sorry.
So do you intentionally look out for shapes in your composition? Right, we saw a lot of spirals, a lot of layers. It's something that's always been with you, right? A lot of different shapes. Is that because of your background as an architect? Why do you always?
Yeah, no. As I told you before, I think that's I think it's kind of natural for me. It came quite natural for me to do this kind of composition, this kind of game with layers and colors. And maybe because first than a photographer, I'm an architect. So I always try to put proposition and balancing in the image. I'm not so extreme, you know, like maybe sometimes I did some extreme photo with wide angles, but I dropped it. I can show you if you want, guys. I don't know if we have time. Something from the last things, you know. Okay, this is a game change. You know, like I drop off all my knowledge, all my techniques, and I try to be focusing on the field. And if in the first moment of my landscape journey, I was concentrating by maybe 30% in cameras and 70% post-processing. Now the things are completely different, and post-processing part is a very small part of my latest works. What I try to do here is trying to fill in the frame using the snowflakes and working with vertical lines and horizontal created by the snow and the forest behind. This kind of approach is what I'm looking for in the present and next years, I hope. Trying to be creating attention in the viewers and create something unique. You can reply so easily in a shot like this. So this is what what gave me a new energy, a new passion to go more, to move forward in landscape photography.
Transition.
No, these kinds of images and kind of variety that you've been shooting, they really intrigue me. And there is one question that is coming in my mind that you started with, let us say, we even restrict ourselves to the images that you shared here. Mm-hmm. And so you started with vastness and that softness of the Tuscany, and then you moved on to that sunset on the so, and then you come to then we've even seen the intimate macroscapes or landscapes, whatever you might want to call it, and then these so do you really find it challenging to shift from one kind of landscape to another kind of landscape, or does it come easily to you, and or you have to remind yourself that you are going to shoot something totally different today?
No, it was not simple. It was not. I thought that I think that I'm at the beginning of this journey. I'm not arrived in any part of the. I didn't achieve anything. But this kind of photos, of imaging, this one I love most. Right, for now, trying to make something different for me is not a guilty. I don't feel guilty to drop the old stuff, to trying to make something different. I'm convinced that everyone has his life in landscape, his journey in landscape. Maybe this is my path. Maybe it's not. I don't know. This is what I prefer to do right now. So I don't have to give an excuse to nobody, to say I'm just myself.
Andrea, can you talk us through your thought process of what you are capturing in this? We are talking about this image. What you are capturing, what is the idea, and what do you want us to feel and see?
Well, I took this shot without tripod, first of all. So I didn't plan this because I just walked near this forest in Norway, and I didn't plan at all. But as I turned my head, I saw this kind of beautiful scenario that I had the pleasure to see. I took my camera, and I remember that I make a very open aperture to make these snowflakes much bigger, like f4, f4.0. And then I work on the shutter speed to try to not burn everything. And I freeze this moment that created this kind of connection with the world of painting, and this is what I would like to do right now, is creating kind of, I don't want to talk about art because this is not art for me. Art is something else. But creating this relationship between painting and photography is one of my main goals in the latest part of my journey in landscape.
So is there a composition thought process that this is my main part of the subject, or you're just filling up the frame? That is the only thing that you want to do?
Okay. I would like to make this, creating this kind of horizontal lines between the snow and the forest, speaking about composition, that it creates occurs by using the colors, because the white was completely pure and brighter. And the other part in the shadow are this kind of forest that was completely green. And then I try to cut this horizontal with the branch, the trunks. And I creating this kind of frame so full and so filled, trying to fill the void using the snow. I don't know if I answered.
And the branches are all dodged. The branches are all dodged.
No,
and
no,
the
no.
background is dark. Is that right?
I don't. I didn't use dodge here. I didn't use dodge and burning or tone effect. I didn't use anything like that.
Okay.
I only think that I use it web sharpening, to create something more, create a better sharpening of the image.
Thank you.
But yeah, I work in terms of white balancing here because it was completely blue, and I prefer to neutralize everything using the pure white. This is what I work.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful thought process.
Very interesting.
After that, I can show you this.
This is one of my favorites, Andrea, from your recent work.
I took, this is my last shot that I took before the COVID-19 came to ruin our lives. I took this shot inside the national park here near Florence in Casentino, in Appennino, the Apennine Mountains. And it was a very, very windy morning. So I don't know, I tried to always, as you can see, work with horizontal tones, horizontal layers, horizontal subject, creating this kind of progression of colors and using a long exposition. And to do that, I use a neutral density filters and using the 24105. So it allowed me to create this kind of dynamic foreground that it works pretty well instead of the static subject on the background. And even here, I work on colors and shapes in terms of horizontal lines and vertical ones.
That's very interesting because
yeah, it's completely different from the first.
Very interesting. It's like I don't know. Your thought process is probably, as you rightly said, is moving more towards now creating a painting or an art, something resembling that, rather than so. I think it is really progressing well here.
Andrea, just a question for you. Actually, Sanak on the YouTube, feed also made a very good point that, people who believe that post-processing is you can make it in landscape photography. That's not true. That's not true. What you really need is sense of composition, sense of color, sense of light. I think all those are more important, right? So kudos to your journey, Andrea. I've known you for quite a few years, and then how you have changed is quite amazing. Now, my question is a little personal to you.
Sure.
Obviously, you're an architect, right? You have a job which pays for everything that you want in your life, right? Now, photography is more of an extension of your passion because it helps you connect with me, right?
Yeah.
Now,
that's true.
So, did having that proper day job allow you to become yourself? Because a lot of people who are selling their photo prints, they can't become what you have done because they still have to sell their photographs. They still have to sell their workshops.
Yeah. I had the chance to, many years ago, maybe 3 years ago, to change my, my work in starting a new business in landscape photography. I had that chance. But 3 years ago, I became father. So I consider this kind of changing in my life like a jump in the void. Even if I have this great passion, I I'm convinced that if I can transform myself in a full-time landscape photographer for job, to make this kind of business, I don't think I could stay in nature or for my passion. I need my time. I need my free time, spending that in photography. In landscape photography can create in me, like a balancing between family, job, and passion. I don't want to be. I never like to be a full-time landscape photographer. I don't know. Maybe it's not. This is not suit for me. I prefer to take my rare few free times, because I have no free times right now, and trying to make a travel or trying to go in nature. This is it. I don't want to miss this chance. I'm not the kind of guy that, I try to guiding people and post-processing lessons and stuff like that. I think that you have to be motivated to do that. And I'm not that kind of person. I prefer to stay with friends and enjoying this kind of moment, enjoying my very rare free time, trying to do my best to explain myself through my photos. I don't know if I answer to your question.
To that completely.
Yeah, very good.
So guys, I don't know if you want to see something else or if you have any question about it, but we can see something from the last ages of my landscape photography. Pretty the same, the technique are quite in a second line. In this kind of photos, I've tried to connecting with the environment, with the nature, and I've tried to find something that can allow me to express myself. This is, of course, it's a part of a bigger project in which I'm working on. Maybe I will finish in 10 years. I don't know, because I have no time right now, but I would like to finish and create something more connected, and not, as I told you before, working on a single shots, single images. I know that this kind of image don't attract so much people, like the shot of 5 towers or the Icelandic rocks. But I want to be myself, and this is what I would like to do.
That is one amazing takeaway. I think we are also now running out of time, so you can probably stop sharing and then we can start talking. So because what I feel is that in going through the journey that you've taken us through, that's one really inspirational journey and evolution of a photographer that I can easily say. And there's a lot of learning here for photographers who are trying to make big in landscape photography. And the few learnings that I can take back from here, this particular session, is that when you are a full-time landscape photographer, you're trying to be a full-time landscape photographer, you are restricting yourself. You are putting too much of pressure onto yourself, because now you have to start making money. And that is where your growth or your evolution, or you are trying to be yourself, that you in the end you said that you're trying to be myself, that I'm trying to be myself, and I don't want anything to take it away from me. And that is what is helping you grow, helping you see differently, helping you challenge yourself to see differently. And probably that is the best thing that can ever happen to any photographer per se, if I say in general terms, and landscape photographer in particular, because the moment we have that pressure on us to be known, to have more followers so that our images can sell, that is the moment we stop growing. And then all our images start looking the same.
Yeah, this is the point.
Yeah, and that is where you are creating you are the differentiator. You are really being yourself, and it's really phenomenal to see, because I have seen your website, and the many images that we could not see here because of paucity of time. The kind of intimate landscape that you have created, and as Sarita points out on YouTube as well, that you have a particular name for it. That means you really feel for those intimate landscapes. You are really emotionally attached to them. For everything that you click, there's a thought process. It might not necessarily be always following the quantum ratio. It might not necessarily always follow the rule of thirds, but there is something in your mind which you do not want to stop just because people know you as a landscape photographer.
That's true.
And that is amazing. That is one really amazing thing to take back home. It's a huge learning for us. And I could relate to it, that the moment I started trying to make money out of photography per se, the creativity died.
I'm not saying that it's not fair. It's not fair for me.
No, I get it.
I appreciate everyone who work on the landscape photography market, because there are so many great, photographer like Fossati or Ryan Dyer. They are creating something unique, even if they are working as landscape photographers. So I appreciate them so much, but this is not, sweet for me. And I think that I want to be free to find my own path, my own style. There's something that you have inside that you want to put on your works. I truly convinced that our images talk for ourselves, and if you are not comfortable with your own works, you have to try another thing, so you have to stop it, because I don't want to be that kind of landscape photography who live on Instagram or Facebook every day, spamming the images every day, every week, spamming image. Thousands of images that I saw on Instagram, even in a huge, big profile in Instagrams. I really don't like that. I really don't like them, and this is because maybe they are made only to capture the attention on this kind of world, in social media. And the game has changed a few years ago with this kind of social media, platform sharing. And the quality for me is quite lower than before. This is what I thought, what I'm thinking.
This is for you, because it is amazing, because see, everybody has their own way, and nothing to take away from what they do, and they are achieving success. And Randar has been phenomenal. We've interacted with him, and you might have seen that interview as well. A huge source of inspiration for all of us, Enrico Fossati himself. But what you shared today is a huge learning for anybody and everybody out there who's trying to become a photographer, who's trying to reach a certain level, is that do not always look at trying to quit your job. That should not be the aim. You can still explore, become a good photographer, doing what you're doing, and still finding your passion, and still succeeding, and still making your mark.
Yeah.
And that is
if I can make only simple advice for everyone who would like to enter in this kind of landscape world, it to be themselves. Don't try to be another one. Try to make your own mistakes. Don't try to make another photo because it works in terms of following. Many people went in landscape photography or on the field trying to achieve what another photographer already achieved.
Yeah.
This is the death of creativity. if everyone will go on Podere Belvedere and make this same shot, instead going in nature or in a natural park or in the wild coast, we are right now we are losing ourselves, and we are losing the possibility, the chance to show to the other ones another aspect of landscape photography, another aspect of our souls. You know, I'm truly convinced of it, and I will not change my own personality view for 1,000 likes, 100 likes. They are garbage, you know.
No, if they come, fine, but not for that. Certainly not for that.
Yeah, I'm happy if the other one like my image. Of course, I'm happy. But this is not the main goal, the main target of my landscape. You know.
Very well said.
I prefer to stay in nature for 1 week with the tent without shot any image, enjoying the experience, instead of create one single shot maybe that cannot represent me.
Very well said, because when we photographers are on the field in front of a scene, we rather think creatively and challenge ourselves how to create a unique image out of that, rather than standing there and thinking, wow, if it this way, this will get us 1,000 likes. So we don't do that.
But I'm not saying that you don't have to shot Cinque Terre or Tre Cime di Lavaredo or Vestrahorn in Iceland. I already been there. I already tried this road. I have already tried these, mistakes. If you go there with this kind of mentality, this kind of thoughts, you will reach another one, another one photos. You will shot another one's works. Being original and being trying to do what you really like, it's very difficult. If you want to go outside from the mainstream, like mainstream in social network, social media, or mainstream only in place, talking about the places.
Perfect.
Like cliche.
Very well said. So thank you so much, Andrea. It's been an amazing talking to you. It's been one phenomenal session, really.
Thank you, guys.
And it's a huge learning, especially for me. I'm sure for everybody else out there. And there's nothing better than listening to somebody who's full of passion, who wants to explore something new every day, not bothering about social media, not bothering about what others would say, and still make his mark. And that is amazing. Thank you so
guys.
much, India. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this session. So we will have to bid goodbye now, and hope to stay connected, and whenever hopefully the corona goes away very soon, so that we can.
I hope so, and thank you guys to create this kind of things in this kind of moment so hard. I think that it can make a pleasure for everyone who truly love landscape photography, and not only. You are creating something unique, really. And it's a pleasure and honor for me to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you. So bye everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye guys.
Bye guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Ciao. Namaste. Namaste.
Shukriya.
Yeah.
Bye guys.